Pranayama exercises. Now that you have a solid foundation in the physiology and philosophy of the breath practice, we'll move into some basic pranayama exercises. The exercises covered in this section are some of the most common and effective pranayama exercises. It's good to become familiar with each of these practices. Most pranayama exercises have a wide array of effects, both emotional and physiological. As you begin to understand these effects fully, you'll be able to make small changes to direct your practice towards a specific intention. Linking the practices will help even more, as we will explore in Section 4. Considerations for practicing pranayama. Breathing exercises are best done on an empty stomach. Having any food in your belly can make some of these exercises uncomfortable. It's important to feel comfortable and supported when doing them. Consider wearing loose or non-restrictive clothing so your belly is free to expand with minimal effort. Ideally, you want to practice somewhere quiet and comfortable with minimal distractions. As we move into sequencing breath exercises in Section 5, the intent of your practice will dictate the best time of day to do the practice. If the intention isn't dependent on the time of day, such as breathing to help with sleep, then practice in the morning, and that's best so you feel the benefits throughout the day. As already discussed, whenever you are seated, you should have your knees slightly lower than your hips to support your spine so you can breathe properly. If sitting on the floor is too difficult for you to maintain, then do these practices seated in a chair that supports your spine and proper breathing. When approaching a pranayama practice, especially the more rigorous exercises that involve either rapid breathing or long holds, it's important to take an easy approach. The effects of the breath can be intense and come on rapidly. Breathing too fast can trigger panic attacks and other behavioral changes. Holding the breath can cause our blood pressure to drop rapidly and make us pass out. Although the chances of something bad happening are slim, it's always a good idea to test the waters before jumping in head first. Some practices are intense and the effects obvious, while others can be more subtle and take time and repetition before we understand how they truly affect us. Everyone responds differently to these exercises, so if you don't feel what is described, it doesn't necessarily mean you are doing it wrong. If a practice doesn't feel good, stop and modify so that it makes sense to you. Having a clear intention of your goals for the practice will help guide you to where you should be. Most importantly, dictate the time needed to experience the results of the practice and enjoy the process. 3-part breathing. Dirgha, Svasam, Pranyama. Dirgha Svasam Pranayama is the 3-part yogic breath, also known as the complete yogic breath. Dirgha, sometimes spelled Dirgha, means deep or long, and Svasam refers to breathing. This is usually the first of the pranayama practices that I teach to my students because it is the basis for any deep breath. It is called 3-part breathing because it refers to the order in which the 3 parts of the torso are expanded: lower, middle, and upper. When we inhale, the air moves down the trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, and alveoli in that order. The lungs expand in every direction, just like a balloon being inflated. We cannot breathe into the bottom of the lungs before we breathe into the top of the lungs. We also cannot technically breathe into the abdomen. The diaphragm separates the thoracic cavity, which contains the lungs, from the abdominal cavity. The cue, breathe into the belly, is not literal, but expanding the abdomen expands the lower ribs and in turn expands the chest. Dirgha Svasam is the technique of expanding the container. Think back to the example of the balloon in a jar on page 28. We need to expand the jar to put more air in the balloon. Dirgha Svasam is the system that allows us to expand the capacity of the container. Although air enters the lungs from the top down and the lungs expand equally, when we work to expand the container, we start from the bottom and move upward because it's the most effective way to increase vital capacity. The general purpose of this breath is to find our maximum inspiratory capacity by utilizing all muscles of inhalation. Dirgha Svasam is excellent practice for strengthening the diaphragm and intercostal muscles, as well as stretching the thoracic cavity to help increase our vital capacity. This practice can also be used to bring more awareness to the breath, to focus and calm the mind. As with all pranayama exercises, we must maintain good posture so that we can fully utilize our diaphragm and accessory breathing muscles. Fully relax the belly. As you inhale, expand your stomach outward. This action creates more space for the visceral organs and enables the diaphragm to move farther downward as it contracts. Relaxing the core also relieves tension around the lower ribs, which allows the rib cage to expand further. At the same time as you relax the belly, soften the low back and kidney area to enable the back ribs to expand. The inhalation should expand the lower torso 360 degrees in all directions. Once you reach the maximum expansion of the lower back and stomach, open up in the middle of the chest and middle back. Inhaling into the chest pulls the lower ribs upward. However, don't let your shoulders or collarbones lift. The natural tendency is to raise the chest upwards rather than expand it outward. Lifting the ribs decreases our vital capacity and the maximum expansion of the chest as well, as it trains our intercostal muscles to work less efficiently. While focusing on the chest, inhale and allow your collarbones to lift. Then try the same inhalation again, but this time keep your shoulders relaxed and your collarbones stationary so that all the ribs expand outward and upward towards the collarbones. Hopefully, the second breath felt better and more complete. The collarbones anchor the other intercostal muscles to create the lifting action, which allows for more expansion. The last component is the upper chest and back. Most people tend to lift their collarbones when breathing into the upper chest. Of these three parts of expanding the container, the upper chest has the least effect, and if you fully inhale into the middle chest, you might not see any more expansion. At this part of the breath, you are looking for full expansion of the lungs and torso. Also, think about breathing into your upper back and expanding or widening the shoulder blades. This enables you to expand the back intercostals. We can also do Dirgha Svasam by taking smaller, less full breaths and focusing on the quality of the breath. Most of the energy and effort should be directed towards the lower torso, then the middle chest, and the least effort into the upper chest. There is a tendency to create unnecessary stress when breathing into the upper chest. We can think of the three parts of the breath as having different ratios. Instead of breathing equally into the belly, chest, and upper chest, we spend more time expanding the stomach and much less time expanding the upper chest. I use a 3-2-1 ratio as a general guideline. For example, a 12-second inhalation would involve 6 seconds of expansion into the belly, 4 seconds of chest expansion, and 2 seconds of upper chest expansion. However, when the inhalations get really long, the ratio becomes closer to 3-3-1. The exhalation should be equal through the chest and belly. You can exhale to the natural pause in the exhalation cycle where the diaphragm comes to its neutral state, or continue exhaling until the lungs are empty by compressing the chest and belly using the muscles of expiration. In the beginning, it's good to use a ratio when practicing Dirgha Svasam so that you get comfortable with the fullness of the breath. Once you feel comfortable, you can do 3-part breathing more intuitively, which will allow you to focus more on the intention of what you are practicing. The physiological effects of the breath will change depending on how fast you breathe. Because Dirgha Svasam involves deeper, fuller breaths and moving more air, you will likely be breathing very slowly. When we practice faster breathing, even if the breaths are full and deep, we rarely focus on this level of detail. Without adding kumbhaka to the practice, you won't see the advantages that come from increasing our carbon dioxide levels. However, the slower, deeper breathing will increase the amount of nitric oxide that you inhale. Steps to practice Dirgha Svasam Pranayama. 1. Sit or stand in a good conventional breathing posture with a tall, neutral spine. Optional. Place one hand on your chest and one hand on your stomach to channel awareness. 2. Use the breath ratio 3-2-1. Inhale into the belly and low back for a count of 6. After the count of 6 and the maximum belly expansion, inhale into the mid-chest for a count of 4. After the chest is fully expanded, breathe into the upper chest for a count of 2. Keep your shoulders and collarbones neutral and relaxed. Exhale slowly and equally for a count of 12. Repeat if needed. Change the ratio until you find a count that works for you. Dirgha Svasam Pranayama effects. Increase in nitric oxide, increase in vital capacity and total lung capacity, increase inspiratory reserve, strengthening of the diaphragm and inspiratory muscles, calmness and mental clarity, increased sattva energy, states of equanimity, balance in the autonomic nervous system, and increased ventral vagal complex tone.